Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are. With Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is...
Get him, R2. Watch out.
The Jedi use their power for good.
Good is a point of view, Anakin. The Sith and the Jedi are similar in almost every way, including their quest for greater power.
A powerful Sith you will become. Henceforth, you shall be known as Darth Vader.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes.
This is James Arnold Taylor, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi. I have a good feeling about this.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Coffee with Kenobi, your family-friendly, spoiler-free Star Wars podcast where intelligent conversation and a splash of humor bring fans together from across the galaxy. I'm your host, Dan Zayer, educator and Star Wars author. Whether you're a lifelong Jedi Master or just hopped off your first Star Cruiser, grab your cap and join us as we explore the mythology, philosophy, and wonder of a galaxy far, far away, one conversation at a time. Coffee with Kenobi is more than a podcast. It's a community. Together we celebrate the people, stories, and experiences that make Star Wars so special, creating a space where fans can come together and share their voices. Thank you to the official travel partner of Coffee with Kenobi, MEI Travel and Mouse Fan Travel. Check out coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel for a no-cost, no-obligation quote, and let them know Coffee with Kenobi and Dan Zayer sent you. We've got an amazing show for you today. Matthew Stover and Tom Hoeler are here to talk about the Star Wars Revenge of the Sith Novelization Anniversary Edition featuring annotations from the author himself. I am so excited that I get to have this conversation with these two gentlemen and that I get to share it with each and every one of you. So pull up a chair, grab your favorite mug, and let's have Coffee with Kenobi. I'm sure you remember, but the year was 2005. The last film at the time, so we thought, was Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, the last film in this incredible prequel trilogy. But before that, the novelization came out, a novel that I think it's fair to say blew fans out of the water because there was something familiar and yet something so incredibly different. And now you, listeners, have this opportunity on October 14th to buy Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, Episode 3, the deluxe edition with over 170 annotations and a new introduction by my very special guest, the one and only Matthew Stover. Matthew, welcome to Coffee with Kenobi.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And also joining us, he is the inspiration behind the perspiration for this incredible deluxe edition. Returning guest, Tom Hoeler. Tom, welcome back to Coffee with Kenobi.
Hello, Dan. It is really awesome to be here and nice to talk to you again.
Yeah, so this is pretty fantastic because this novel really is so incredibly special for a lot of reasons we're going to talk about. And Matthew, I want to talk to you about this. Now, you certainly cover this a little bit in the beginning, but I think there's more we could probably discuss. When you look back, can you kind of walk us through, take us in a time machine, if you will, about what it was like when you first wrote this book as far as the anticipation and preparation?
Well, it was an unusual experience for me. I mean, it was my first time taking on a project this size. And I don't know, it was kind of terrifying. I was tremendously flattered to be asked. I don't know if you recall that the previous two authors who did novelizations for the prequel trilogy are fantasy authors, tremendously higher profile writers than me, and I don't know. I took it as a compliment and just decided I was gonna try and do the best I could with it.
And you talked in the intro about going to Skywalker Ranch and meeting George. Talk, if you would, about that experience.
Well, as I think I allude to a little bit in the introduction, I don't really remember a lot of it all that clearly. I was just at Legends Expo. It is a convention they run in Burbank that is, or ran in Burbank, that is devoted to Star Wars fiction novels. And one of the other guests there this time was Jim Lucino, who was sort of my Star Wars guru when he was part of the project that I first signed on for. And he reminded me that he had actually been in the room for that meeting. Now, Jim was a friend of mine. I had known him for some years by that time. And I'm sure I was very glad to have, another writer as opposed to just me and a couple of editors and him. But I had no recollection when I was doing the, thinking back. Actually, I remembered some people there who weren't there. So because all I was thinking about was the questions I wanted to ask him, and because I had a couple of kind of out there ideas for approaching this book, and I was just trying to sound him out on how much I could get away with, and well, you saw what happened.
I sure did. Fortunately, I think it worked out quite well. Certainly for all of us who enjoy this incredible story. So, Tom, I want to ask you. Of course, you are the editorial director of fiction and special projects for Random House Worlds. You've worked on a lot of Star Wars. But I want to talk to you about. Do you remember first reading Revenge of the Sith when it came out?
I had to actually give this a little bit of thought. And what I can recollect is that of the 3 prequel novelizations, it's actually the only one I didn't read before the film. I remember reading, Phantom Menace before the film. I remember reading Attack on the Clones, but I didn't read Revenge of the Sith. I can't recall why. I might chalk it up to I was a senior in high school and had other things going on. But I do remember that. Obviously rushing out to see the film the day it came out, etc. And I remember reading it a week later when I was between viewings. And ultimately, I think I saw Revenge of the Sith somewhere between 4 and 5 times in the film in theaters. And I remember reading the novelization a week later and being so surprised just because it didn't read not just like any of the other Star Wars novelizations I've read, but certainly any movie novelization I had ever read. And I remember reading it and looking around, and it was at a time in my life when I had folks to talk to about Star Wars, but I didn't have a group of people who were also reading Star Wars novels. It was kind of like my fun little solitary thing. Reading Star Wars books was the part of Star Wars. It was kind of just mine. So I remember reading it and then looking around and just having nowhere to go with my reactions, my emotions, I had no outlet for it. So I just read the book again. It was the only way to process having read something like that was just all right, I'm just going to read it. And I remember reading it quite a few times in succession, by the time the summer had rolled around. And it sits among those kind of moments where you read a book and then you're like, I didn't know you were allowed to do that in a book. And maybe that was just because maybe I wasn't as well read as a high school senior as I thought I was. But it really was this moment where I started to think about what a science fiction fantasy, and particularly what a Star Wars book potentially could be. I had read some of Matt's other work. I'd actually read some of Matt's original and non-Star Wars work. So I was aware of Matt as a writer when I picked up the book and saw he had written it. But even so, I was so taken aback by it in the best way. And it was just I really wish then that I had someone that I could have really shared in that excitement with. I remember trying to get my friends to go check it out, and they're like, we could just go see the movie again. And I was like, all right, well, I guess fair. But it was great. and it's held a special place for me ever since, which is why we wanted to do this project, or one of the reasons.
So that actually transitions beautifully into this idea of the deluxe edition. Of course, it's the 20th anniversary, but sure that plays a part, but how did sort of the impetus and the direction for the deluxe edition come out?
So it starts from there, right? Okay, there's a Star Wars anniversary coming for a film, and the books, the Star Wars books team and Star Wars Publishing is lucky enough that we've been able to publish so many things over so many years that whenever there's like a movie or TV or other kind of Star Wars anniversary, there is probably a book anniversary somewhere in there to take a look at. And so you're thinking about, well, how do we celebrate the 20th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith? There's any number of ways you could do that. And immediately I was like, because I like to look these things up and keep them in mind, I was like, Revenge of the Sith as a hardcover book has not been available as a new book in 20 years. It's been out of print since then. Interestingly, obviously you can find it in a number of ways. I was like, we should do a deluxe edition. And I have always had in my mind all of these questions and this thought of like, I would love to just sit down and talk to Matt Stover about this book and about how he did this. And I was like, I don't think I'm the only one who feels that way. And so if we're going to make this amazing deluxe cool package that people can put on their shelf and really enjoy and really accentuates the story inside of it, why don't we go ask Matt if he wants to come tell us about it? And so that is where the idea came from, to not just make like a cool special book as a physical object, but imbue it with these annotations and this author's note and this experience of having Matt essentially sitting next to you, telling you about the book and his process and how he came up with it along the way. So it was kind of just like, well, I want this. I think other people do. And I was able to convince enough other people that they were like, all right, Tom seems real excited about this. And everyone else on the team who has read the book. And I even roped in Star Wars authors who have all been so influenced by this book, or who point to this book as their favorite Star Wars book. I'm like, look, it's not just me. Look, all these other authors, all these other people. And we were able to get everybody really excited about celebrating the anniversary in a unique and special way.
And definitely mission accomplished. So Matthew, for you, when you were approached, what were your reactions to revisiting this and going through and making these annotations?
I thought it was a terrible idea.
It seemed like a lot of fun based on what I was reading.
Oh, well, I thought it was a terrible idea. I had no interest in doing that. Writing it there's a kind of magic involved that involves, your imagination filling in all of the holes that I'm leaving in the story that you're reading. And I felt like, I don't know, I didn't want to be talking about, I didn't want to take people away from the story talking about, why this is good or that's good or whatever. Just that's not my kind of thing. And it was Tom who basically told me that story, but he very briefly just said, a lot of Star Wars fans write themselves, and they might be interested in finding out how you came to some of your more eccentric storytelling choices. And when he framed it like a teachable moment, well, my mother was a teacher. My grandmother was a librarian. It's just, I don't know. It made it kind of fun to just talk about how desperately I was scrambling for any way I could come up with to try and express, just how important I thought the story is.
So was it? Had you revisited a lot over the years? Was it kind of like meeting an old friend for the first time in a long time?
Well, I not really. I revisit my own work from time to time. I'm rereading one of my books now because I'm writing another book about that character. But no, sometimes if I see a reference somebody makes online or something, and I think, oh, that's an interesting take on that bit, I go back and reread it, because a lot of times, people get things out of a story that, I did not put there on purpose. And it's always interesting to me to see what they latch onto. And so, yeah, the answer is yes and no.
Right. Well, I think that's fantastic. So there must have been, well, maybe there weren't, but were there obstacles to creating the 20th anniversary edition of this? And how did you overcome them? Because there's more to it than just reproducing the beautiful prose, but there's a lot of special things that go into this because you want to celebrate the over 170 annotations, but just the idea that this is a special anniversary as well.
The best and biggest obstacle we ran into is one that Matt and I got to share together, which is, after we sort of talked about what the goal was for the annotations and others and other stuff. And we sort of were like, okay, we're going to do this. And we had kind of agreed. Matt made a cogent point. He's like, I have never done this before. I don't quite know how to do this. And I had to be extremely honest with Matt and say, I don't know how to do this either. I have never done this before. And so we had to figure out together, how exactly do you actually make an annotated, like, how do you make annotations? How do you actually do this?
Yeah.
And Matt made a suggestion that I still can't quite believe he made. And Matt asked me, and it feels weird that I'm speaking for Matt, who is also in this conversation, but it's because I was so taken aback in the best way, and I have thought about it, like, honestly, ever since you asked, when you said, well, would you annotate the book first? Which was your suggestion of asking me to go through the book and earmark or circle or underline and just note either scenes, lines, chapters, just moments where you thought that readers that people might have a question. There are things you have questions. Oh, cool. Go circle that line or go layer them into the book. And then essentially I gave the version that I annotated to Matt, and Matt used that as his roadmap to then sort of follow behind and say, oh, you're asking a question about, this is how it feels to be Anakin Skywalker forever. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. I can now just answer that question, or at least can look at this section and, and find something to pull together. That was honestly the biggest challenge, was us just figuring out, well, how do we do this?
Yeah. Well, and honestly, I didn't know, I didn't remember that you were new at this. That just seemed like the obvious way to go about this, because I don't have any way of knowing what other people are going to be curious about, because for me, it's all one thing. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and I solved that challenge in a very funny way, which is one, I can't remember if I told Matt any of this. The first thing I did is I went back all the way to 2004, 2005, and I found every single interview that Matt has ever done about this book, written, recorded. Matt, you may recall, you did an author blog for like AOL, the Washington Post blog, when you were on your author tour for this book, and you did like daily blogs.
Wretched Hive of Scum and Villainy.
Yes, you did daily blogs. I found all of those in an internet archive and read all of them. I basically found every word you'd ever spoken about this book to know what are the things he has already talked about and what are the things he hasn't. And I figured I sort of mapped all that stuff out. And then what I did was I secretly just solicited and collected tons of questions and moments of the book to earmark and identify from other Star Wars readers in every corner of the known galaxy that I could find. My friends, fellow authors, when I was at an event or I was like, in a conversation in an online community, I would just be like, ask me, oh man, isn't this cool? And I would just broadly like bring it up and then watch the conversation and just make notes of like, man, everyone's talking about this scene or that thing. And I used all of this as a roadmap to then go through and circle and mark and figure out like what, to your point, like what are people going to be interested in? And to try to also create as a diverse a set of questions, right? To not just be like, tell me how you came up with this cool line of dialogue, right? To try to layer in a plurality of things that you could make teachable moments and that you could share with people. And it was so much fun. And I have no idea.
It was really fun to do too. It wasn't like work at all. It's not like writing, because I didn't have to make anything up. Telling the truth is the easiest thing in the world.
So did you sort of read it and sort of like write things down as you went along that you thought would be interesting? Because I'm sure there were some maybe that didn't make the final cut just for purposes of spacing, or was it all pretty much in there?
I don't think we cut very much.
There were some things that where I repeated myself. I think that
okay.
That kind of stuff. Where I think you covered this somewhere, but other than that, I don't remember anything that was straight up shot down.
No. I don't. Yeah, I think there were a couple of places where we ended up with like 3 or 4 things like that were all going to be close to each other, so we sort of consolidated a couple for spacing.
Sure.
And to your point, Matt, there was definitely 1 or 2 places where like, we covered this, and there's a lot of density here, so let's make that. Yeah. But almost everything that Matt put down as an annotation made it in some form, and for the most part, it was just like cool. Little proofread,
sure.
Little bit of a tweak or edit here, a little bit of specification, and good to go.
A little fact checking.
Yeah, a little bit of fact checking about years and dates and
sure,
stuff like that.
Well, that I couldn't imagine that anything would be like not added, except just because spacing is such a challenge in the publishing world. So I'm grateful to hear that. So we might as well just talk about the annotations. They are absolute. Look, I'm coming at this from a couple different directions, both just as a fan, of course, of Star Wars, as an educator for 20 years as an English teacher, high school English teacher, and then as just a Star Wars podcaster. So I'm wearing all these hats, and it hits all those right notes because the mythology of Star Wars is such a wonderful thing. So this is a must-read. Annotations are for fans of Star Wars as well as fans of good literature, because during the process of writing these, it's quite metacognitive, I would imagine. So what did you learn about yourself as a writer 20 years ago when examining the book anew? I wonder if you found yourself thinking, I wonder if I'd have worded that any differently, or if you were just, what that must have been like for you.
I don't recall. I don't recall thinking about that much. There were a few places that I was going through and rereading something that that had not been called to my attention in the intervening years, so I hadn't read it forever. And there were a few places where I thought that was okay. I didn't remember that. I didn't remember that being that good. But that's just me. I mean, I am my own biggest fan.
Hey, as you should be. And you have some fun with that too in some of the annotations, especially early on when there's a description of Count Dooku, and you talk about his sort of way that he looks at himself, and you playfully describe yourself in those annotations as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. People, something about the people with the highly inflated self-regard are easy to manipulate.
Yes,
and I've mentioned that I have been prone to that myself from time to time. Something like that.
It was very fun. The tone, I will say too, as someone looking at this novel truly for the first time, I very much like Tom. I didn't read it when it first came out, and I think it was just because college and getting married and all kinds of stuff. I found the moments of annotation. I looked forward to them eagerly because, again, I just like to study the mythology of Star Wars anyway. But it also sometimes a bit of nice levity because, as you both know very, very well, this is a very heavy book with incredibly dark tones. So I almost found it like kind of a welcoming relief on occasions. Well, it was a very unique way to experience this book.
Well, I just hope, honestly, I really hope that very few people will read the book for the first time in the annotated edition. Because the idea of somebody reading the book with my voice inside their head saying, and this part is about, just gives me an itch that I just can't scratch.
Well, I think the balm for that itch is going to be the fact that the Star Wars fans I know and the listeners of Coffee with Kenobi, they are going to eat this up like it's Thanksgiving dinner. Because this is the kind of stuff that we talk about when we're reading, when we're watching the films, when we're watching a Disney Plus series. These are things we analyze and talk about and discuss. And I think, I hope that you will be pleasantly happy and delighted to know that you have served up something where we wanted this. It's very much a dream come true for fans of this incredible literary work. And I don't say that lightly. I'm pretty much a book snob as an English teacher, but this is a literary feast. And I think these annotations just give it even more to enjoy. So I appreciate that so much.
Yeah, that's what we were doing. We were doing it for the history. That's
right. Mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. Tom, since you got to experience this in many ways, as you mentioned, this is sort of like a first time for you as well. What did you learn about yourself just as a fan and a lover of the written word going through this?
What did I learn about myself? Well, now I know how to make an annotated edition, which is good in case I ever want to do that again. What did I learn about myself? It certainly gave me a chance to go back to this book in totality in a way that I haven't in the last number of years. And I think part of that is because of the way this book has become so both totemic and enduring that it becomes one of those things that like you often just experience being in in the Star Wars community. Like you just experience it in bits and pieces because someone's always referencing it or another writer is making an homage to it and stuff. And it's like you're experiencing it all the time, but you're not experiencing the full thing. And actually going back to experience the story from start to end multiple times and really getting to luxuriate in all the ways in which Matt makes that story unfold like a really wonderfully composed piece of origami was really almost surprising in a way that I just like forgotten about, because again I hadn't actually gone on the full ride of the book in quite a while. I'd jump in to read a chapter of something or check out a scene or pull something as a piece of inspiration, and so getting to do that and getting to spend time with it was great, as well as that first time I read it front to back right near the end of the process with the annotations in there and read it as like, okay, I'm going to read this paragraph. Oh, there's an annotation. Read the paragraph, go to the annotation. Read this page. Oh, there's not and actually read it the way that we had intended it to, and how much I was like, this works so well. Oh my gosh, we nailed it. That was super satisfying. Super satisfying. Yeah.
So the first lesson I ever taught as a high school English teacher, the very first lesson I ever taught was a comparison of Anakin Skywalker to Hamlet. The novel Revenge of the Sith had a large impact on my understanding of this connection. It really brought things more into light, kind of painted in some key parts of this canvas for me. Talk, both of you, if you would, about what makes Anakin an ideal tragic hero.
Well, that's ideal tragic hero. Well, he's certainly a classic tragic hero because he has all of the virtues that we expect of a hero, but he has the one flaw that destroys him. What the Greeks, if I'm recalling my 40-year-old university education correctly, I believe it's called hamartia. It is the hero's tragic flaw that leads to his destruction. So he certainly fills the bill from the classical drama sense.
Yeah, he fits the bill, and also his flaw is something that is really easy for anyone to both understand and relate to and empathize with without much necessary additional explanation. And in being able to relate to a character that much, that means that like his downfall, like you can actually feel and understand in a way that a character who has a far more complex or esoteric sort of flaw or motivation, you can still feel and understand, but it may be harder for you to sort of embody that or to sort of understand it. But Anakin is like as sort of pure as it gets, you know, his absolute need and desire to, you know, save and protect and not lose the ones that he cares about to, you know, to an infinite end. That's sort of that is absolutely why I got really scared there at the beginning of the question, Dan. I thought you were going to ask me to try to like pull my Hamlet knowledge from high school English back to the forefront. And I was like, oh my gosh.
No, if you want Hamlet knowledge, listen, I'm going to tell you a secret. I used to be an actor, and the high point of my university acting career, I played Hamlet.
Wow.
I can still do the speeches. Don't get me started. If you want a point by point comparison, I can do it, but it'll take longer than you have.
So I have taught Hamlet for 15 years, and I think you and I could maybe the next celebration do a duet, because I know to be or not to be, probably backwards and forwards, because I make my students memorize it. So that's why it's perfect, right? And I love what you brought in too, because a tragic hero with a flaw, and he doesn't realize his mistakes until it's too late, and the path has already been set into stone for him, and it makes us bleed for him all the more, which you certainly allude to in the annotations. And I think also the fact that you don't need to be a Star Wars fan to appreciate the great epic tragedy of Anakin Skywalker, because the story speaks for itself. And I think that's the genius of George Lucas. And you put more context into that through this novel, and I think that makes it all the more powerful.
Well, you know, that's something that I talk about in the introduction as well. That you know, Mr. Lucas's reaction is his go ahead is that is an expression of somebody who has complete confidence in their story. You know, as long as if you don't screw up the story, I don't mind. Just make it good. Yeah.
That's what Shakespeare does with his adaptations. All the adaptations of Shakespeare over the years, the same thing. Keep the story, change the setting, whatever. Still the same power.
Mm-hmm. Good story is a good story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's talk about, I would be missing a massive opportunity if I didn't ask you both to talk about some of the more notable annotations in the deluxe edition, as well as some of the favorites that stood out to you that you really enjoyed or just had a lot of fun with, or maybe learned a little something about Star Wars through.
Well, the only one that jumps out at me that I really enjoyed is I had a little fun with a very minor character, but notable minor character from The Empire Strikes Back, by inserting him into the Battle of Coruscant. And I got to make I have a bad feeling about this reference in that annotation, and that it warmed my heart.
I particularly enjoy all the annotations where you were very honest and vulnerable with the reader around the emotional impact that writing a particular line of dialogue or the way in which you describe, you know, the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan, and how, you know, these two could never fight, and how you were always honest about that. But then we're always sure to include a little line about, like, I'm glad that I don't have to suffer alone in this, or it hurts, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which was always really fun to get to, and I enjoyed. I also, you have a lot of annotations that build on them, and you did this really wonderful thing, in part because of some of the motifs and some of the themes and just some of the style of the book, in which you're obviously building on your writing is building on itself over the course of the story. And so obviously some of your annotations are building on themselves and almost making a, like, you could actually pull out, there's probably certain threads of annotations we could pull out as like that would fill like a page or two themselves as almost a mini essay on some aspect. And I thought you did. I was so excited to not just see that stuff, because I think it gives the reader a sense of this kind of progression of, again, Matt is right there along with you as you're reading, like actually through the story, but also each one of those was written in such a way that even if the last one in that grouping or in that thread was, let's say, 20 or 30 pages ago, that it felt like it was like additive, but it doesn't force you to like, wait, I got to jump back 50 pages. That was really great. But then, of course, there is one particular annotation that is very special. In fact, it is so special that it is not an annotation. It is a annotation that leads you to essentially a short story that we had to put into the back of the book because it was so long that there was no way to turn it into an annotation. But it is so good. It is so important. I'm not even going to tease at people what it is. You will discover it in the story. All I will tell you is you can, if you want to, though I absolutely do not recommend it. You do turn to the back of the book when you get it. You will see it, and there is an intro for like, if you did that. By the way, here's the setup. Yeah. We thought about that. We're like, somebody's going to do this, so
like choose your own adventure.
Exactly. Oh yes, we did choose your own adventure. There is like for the full story, go to this page sort of thing. But that particular annotation and that story is just it's just incredible. It's perfect. Yeah. It's great.
It ended happily.
It's happily. And it's also tied to one of the most enduring parts of the book for Star Wars readers and for people who love this book. And if you love this book and you've read it a bunch, there is a thing that is in this book and that comes from this book that you just get the joy of this amazing short story. So like all of those, but it is hard to pick a favorite. I was asked actually a few weeks ago to pull a couple of annotations that we might be able to share in excerpt form and stuff ahead of the release, as you do with any book. And I was asked like, hey, can you just like pull like 5 or 6 that you like? And I was like, that's going to be hard. So I was like, all right, well, I'll pull a list and then I'll pare it down from there. And they're like, great, sounds good. My initial list had 57 annotations. They were like, we need like 4. And I was like, well, I have 57. And they're like, well, do what you can. So I got down to 10 eventually, and they have 10. So it's hard to pick a favorite, or it's hard to pick any that really, but all of those kinds of things. And as I said earlier, it's so nice that there are so many different types in here. There are fun jokes. There are emotional insights, Matt, that you make into like, by the way, here's what I was feeling in like 2000, in this time when I was writing, or here's what I was feeling about Star Wars at this time, or even here's my relationship to this character, which is a wonderful, important thing to understand. If someone's writing Obi-Wan Kenobi, it's good to know what they feel about Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? And so there are so many angles that you can take. If you want to learn about writing or learn different aspects of writing, there are annotations that are absolutely built as like, this is a style of writing, or this is a writing technique that is called this, and this is why it matters. Just the plurality of them is maybe actually my favorite thing about them.
Well, one of my personal idols, Fritz Leiber, famously said, you can teach a man almost anything. If you keep him laughing hard enough, he doesn't notice he's learning.
That's the only way I still have a teaching job.
It's got to be fun.
Right? Yes. And mission accomplished yet again. I will say, I agree with you, Tom. When you get to the part where you turn to the very back of the book, I waited because I wanted the full emotional heft. And I believe, Matt, that you suggest it might be cooler or better to wait. I mean, it works either way, but I feel like I had more of an emotional heft when I did wait until the end, because it's kind of a lovely way to kind of punctuate everything. I'll take that.
That is my hope.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I also liked, personally, whenever we get into the IMs, or this, no, I'm sorry, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi, this is Anakin Skywalker. I have reflected on these two and their relationship more than is healthy, doing Coffee with Kenobi for over 12 years. And just being a teacher and incorporating Star Wars into my curriculum when I can. And it made me think about their relationship in more impactful ways, because, and I love the film. I think Revenge of the Sith is a modern classic. It's probably my favorite because of the Shakespearean themes. But the novel, of course, allows us to delve more deeply into their psyche, because that's the beauty of the written word. And that I think is I want to thank you for, just as a fan, for doing that, because I think their relationship is at the essence, the core of this mythology, and it impacts it, and I think in a very profound way.
Well, it certainly kind of illuminates Obi-Wan's relationship with Luke, right?
Yeah, talk about that.
Oh, just I mean, I don't have much to say except I'm just imagining the sense of duty that Obi-Wan has that you can't get from watching the original trilogy,
Right.
because Obi-Wan's not in it enough, right? But Obi-Wan is the actual hero of the prequel trilogy. You know, he's the young knight who ends up saving the day. And then he goes on to, raise the next generation of heroes.
Tom, you have a very reflective look on your face. I'm curious what you're thinking. That's one of the best parts about the show is you can see everyone's reactions.
No, I agree. I agree entirely, and I appreciated too. This is actually reminding me of one of the annotations, and again, for the purpose of keeping the wonder of discovery, I'm going to be a little oblique about it. But there is an annotation where Matt is talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi a little bit, and it is actually one of the annotations where, Matt, you sort of make an argument about Star Wars, like about the story of Star Wars and about this particular story and some of the decision making that characters are making. And you make an argument about, because a character does X, Y happens. If the character did not do X, Y would not happen. Sort of. It's that sort of construction. And that is your annotation, which is like a really interesting moment where you're pausing and giving the reader a real insight again into your connection and relationship and thought about the story that you're constructing. And I remember the very first time reading that in the first draft of your annotations and being like, I don't think I agree with him. I think Matt's wrong. and I remember sitting with that. And I remember sitting with that and wondering, should I tell him I think he's wrong? And be like, no, that's not really important. But I remember grappling with that. And then I remember that by the time we got to and that annotation actually I don't really think changed other than, a little bit of proofreading. I remember that by the time, the third or fourth time that I had read it in going through all of them, I was like, he might be right now. I think he's right. I think he's right. I don't, I was like, but and I was, I enjoyed the journey that particular annotation and a few others like it took me on in thinking about this story. I think you're right now. I'll be curious once I get to start talking to folks who've read it and talk to them about it. Do you think he's right? Do you think he's right?
Well, what I keep trying to tell people is I'm just a writer. My opinion doesn't count for any more than else's.
But it is a fun, compelling argument. And I do think you are correct, or at least I think your argument is correct, for the most part. Yes. Or at least it's in the same vein of you're arguing about whether something else might have been harder or easier. And I do agree. It would have made a thing harder. Would have made it something more difficult, and whether or not is sort of impossible is I think the sort of the real nugget there. But I do think you're right. So I will be looking forward to seeing other feedback that people have about that particular annotation.
And that in the industry is what we call a hook, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. I apologize again for being oblique, but trust me, you will appreciate my obliqueness when you get to that scene in the book and get to read that annotation kind of fresh and have it jump out at you in the way that it jumped out at me.
If it is what I think you're talking about, it could very well be a topic for a future show.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is...
Well, gentlemen, I can't thank you both enough. Again, the book Star Wars Revenge of the Sith Episode 3 Deluxe Edition is available on October 14th. A beautiful, brand new bookcase beneath it. The book itself, just the actual hardback is a work of art in and of itself. There's a couple of beautiful illustrations. It's just a gorgeous book, worthy of display, certainly reading and poring over. Gentlemen, again, thank you so much. Matthew, an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. What can you share about what you have coming down the pipe in the future?
Well, I've just been able to really get started working again, and I have a project underway but I don't want to talk too much about it at this point.
Certainly. Well, we look forward to that with great anticipation.
But why?
And, yes, I bet. And Tom, you've got something exciting going on in the world of the convention circuit.
Yeah, well, we got we're recording this on the 7th, so we've got New York Comic Con coming up this week, where I will be there, actually. Matt will be making an appearance. We're going to get to spend a little time together, and we will actually have the book on sale a few days early for folks who get to grab it and meet Matt. And we're going to have a good time, and I will probably walk through the line and be like, did you read that annotation yet? Do you want to argue about it? We're talking about it, but we'll have a good time. So yeah, we have New York Comic Con coming up, and then a whole bunch more coming in the future. The books never stop, thankfully.
And we are definitely very happy about that. For all things Star Wars, news, reviews, videos, and more, head to our home base, coffeewithkenobi.com. Don't forget to join the CWK Cafe on Facebook at coffeewithkenobi.com/community, our family-friendly, spoiler-free group for all your Star Wars thoughts, comments, and conversation. This podcast is possible thanks to the incredible support of the CWK Alliance. Want to help keep the show brewing? For as little as $1 a month, you can join the CWK Alliance and get access to CWK Pour-Over, our exclusive weekly audio and video podcast. Learn more at coffeewithkenobi.com/CWK Alliance. And know this, 10% of your monthly contributions goes directly to the St. Jude Children's Hospital. Want to connect? You can email me at danz@coffeewithkenobi.com. Follow me on X at Mr. Zer, MRZEHR, Instagram, Threads, at DanZerCWK, and Blue Sky. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can follow Coffee with Kenobi across social media on X, Instagram, Threads, Pinterest, and Blue Sky, and give us a like on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi. And if you want to send an email to the show, you can email us feedback at coffeewithkenobi.com. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you'll find over 700 videos, including past live shows, events, and this podcast. Please take a moment to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It really helps more Star Wars fans find our little corner of the galaxy. Do you need a speaker for your next event? Visit danzmedia.com. I love to discuss mythology, leadership, storytelling, or create something tailored to your audience. And finally, grab your CWK gear at coffeewithkenobi.com/shop and show your support in style.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here.